Sanibonani, ninjani? Yaphila nami. I was thinking about a joke that I can start with, but I couldn't find one. And then I just realized that maybe let me think about something from the Bible. So in the Bible, we know that, or we are told that Jesus turned water into wine. And after hearing my beautiful speakers, I was praying to God that He can turn my English into isiZulu. Because my speakers that have come before me, they really spoke in their own language, and I think that is beautiful, and I think that is important, so that each one of you can walk out of here with the exact knowledge and without misinterpretation. So unfortunately, I'm going to bore you with isiNgisi. I am Wiboni Nkhatho, married, so my other surname is Moringa. I am Sesotho speaking. isiZulu sami asikahle, it's very bad, so I hope you will be patient with me, and I hope that what I have to share with you today, you will be able to take and use it in your life as well. So as my program, sorry, I'm okay. As my program director has already alluded, I'm a clinical psychologist. I work both in public and also in private. Okay, I'm also a mother of 2 boys. I actually came with my 3-month baby. He's on the other side of the church. So when I walked out, I had to go and breastfeed. And I'm also married, as I said. Thank you. So before I start, I would like to take this opportunity to thank God for being here. And I have prayed that He gives me guidance to touch each and one of your lives today. Additionally, I would also like to thank Father Ngobo for the opportunity to speak in front of his congregation and his community as well. And I hope that what I prepared today will also enlighten you. So I've been asked to share about mental health and social impact. Let me give you a little bit of content, so what I will be talking about today. I'll be focusing my presentation on the physical injuries and organ damages that survivors may experience as a result of gender-based violence. Secondly, I'll be addressing the socio-economical consequences, including sleep disorders, so people who get abused, female or male, children, they struggle to sleep at night, and I think my other speaker spoke about this, that as a child, after she experienced the trauma, she couldn't sleep. And a lot of parents think that we are hope, that go back to sleep, stop being spoiled. But these are actually real trauma symptoms, and I'll be speaking about that as well. I'll be speaking about suicidal thoughts. Program director said, mental health, what is that? Where does it come from? Previously, was it there? The answer is, it has always been there. But I know, even as Umusotho, in our own language, we have certain words for depression. Nerves, But someone is trying to communicate that I'm in distress, I'm overwhelmed. Even isiZulu, maybe there's other words that you use. So it still means the same thing, it's just that in English, we have done research to actually combine that into a disorder. Okay. So the third point I'll be talking about is the link between gender-based violence and substance abuse, unemployment, and the challenges of reintegration into the workplace. And the fourth one, which is a big one, is the heightened risks of HIV infections and sexually transmitted infections due to non-sexual acts. So people who get abused or victims of gender-based violence, they also go through what we call non-sexual or forceful sex, if I can put it that way. So we'll talk about the increased risk of HIV with regards to that. And then my other slide will be focusing on mental health and mental health wellness and the long-term impact of gender-based violence on survivors' mental health. So when victims of gender-based violence experience violence, it doesn't just end there. As our speakers before, she said, it goes into your marriage. You might have been abused previously, but it always follows you. Why? Because your mental health has not been addressed, or you have not been given the necessary support structures to be able to deal with what has happened to you. I love the word in isiZulu, bekezela. Well, I don't love it, but it's something that's always been said, and which is not a good thing to always say to women particularly. The word itself is not a bad word, because ungabekezela about other things. School, we know that your children go to university, and when they're going through challenges, we can advise them that continue, hold on, you can do it. But when it comes to abuse, those two words should not go together. Okay, then the last point I'll be making, or the second last point, is the psychological consequences, which includes now trauma that we spoke about. So it's post-traumatic stress disorder. I think a lot of you might have heard this, those who are in the health profession, social development. It's PTSD. That's the most common form of mental illness when it comes to gender-based violence. We also will talk about depression, and we also will talk about anxiety. And the last point, or the last slide, that I have decided to include, and it wasn't on the agenda that I was given. It's the characteristics of the perpetrator. I think, yes, it's very good that we focus on empowering women and to educate women and to give women the necessary tools that if I'm found in this position, what should I do? It's good. I'm for that. But the perpetrators, I feel we spend less time to actually address what they are doing. Because the reason why women are suffering from mental health is because of the perpetrators. So the focus should also be on the perpetrators, because clearly there's something wrong with their own mental health, and that should be addressed. So I won't spend too much time on that, but I will try to just give you some tactics. I think my speakers as well have already done that. The tactics that the perpetrator use, and also a little bit of a personality cluster. So what is actually happening to the perpetrators? Why do they do what they do? So that you can be aware of that. Okay, so the first point is the physical injuries and organ damage. So gender-based violence can have serious and long-lasting physical effects on survivors. It's important to note that these impacts can vary widely depending on the specific forms of violence, the intensity of the incident, and the individual factors. So here are some of the physical injuries and organ damages that survivors may experience as a result of gender-based violence. Bruises and contusions. Physical assaults often lead to bruises and contusions. Mama spoke about it. I think she said it's in Zulu, you say it's popo, popo. Yes, it's the bruises. So these are things that you can easily witness. And I want to encourage women that when you see another woman with a bruise on their face, don't just pass by. without actually inquiring what is happening. These are now the things that we can physically see. The things inside, the psychological ones, are the depression that we might not see, right? Because the person, remember, depression is like she's always isolating. She doesn't, now you're wondering, but you're just asking, you're not actually going to find out what's happening. Okay, but the physical ones you can see. When you see someone with bruises, we can ask, what is going on? Yes, the victims of gender-based violence always hide. They will say, oh, maybe I fell, or something, come up with an excuse because they don't want to be exposed. But your encouragement or your concern will also help to break that silence, as Mama already alluded. Okay, the next physical injury is the fractures and the broken bones. So gender-based violence can result in fractures and broken bones due to the forceful nature of the attacks. Common sites for fractures includes the arms, the ribs, and the facial bones. And sometimes the victims of gender-based violence, their face can be so disfigured. They can actually be attacked so badly that even the face, you can't recognize that. The head and the brain injuries, survivors of violence, particularly domestic abuse and sexual assault, may suffer head injuries, including concussions. So some men, they even kick the woman in the head. So that has long-lasting consequences, mentally and cognitively. So sometimes the person can actually stop functioning. Okay. It can also affect their memory as well. The next injury is internal organ damage. Severe physical assault can cause damage to internal organs such as the liver, the kidneys, the spleen, and the lungs. And the damage can lead to internal bleeding and potentially life-threatening complications. Gynecological injuries. Survivors of sexual violence may experience injuries to their genital areas, including tears and infections. These injuries can have both physical and psychological repercussions. On this point, it's very important for us to recognize the danger of domestic violence, because it can actually get to a point where it causes a woman to not be able to give birth because of these injuries. Okay, and then now it perpetuates the cycle, because if you can't have children, you even are more at risk of what? Getting violated or getting abused. Because now you are married to me, but you can't give me children. Reproductive health issues, I think I've already alluded to that, I'll skip that slide. Sexually transmitted infections and HIV. Sexual violence can expose survivors to a high risk of contracting STIs and HIV due to forced, unprotected sexual contact. So Mama spoke about the cultural, or I think it's the other speaker, Ms. Musiman, about the cultural attitudes that if I want sex now, what's in the Mama? You said it so nice. Upagala. I love that. I will not forget that. Yes. And where are they coming from? Where are these ideas coming from? So we need to be empowered, to stand up for ourselves, that if a woman says today you can't tell, to be able to be heard, that I am tired, because mama, especially mothers of today, they go to work. They come back from work, they bath their children, they cook for the husband, they put their children to sleep. And then after that, they need to go and perform in the bedroom. So if you have a loving husband, they're able to see that, right? So now, if someone is abusing you, they actually have the right to say, what? I'm going to have it now with you. And you don't negotiate the safe methods. To say no, I want us to use protection. They just do as they please, and this increases the risk of HIV because you don't have a say, or the victim doesn't have a say. So that is abuse. Okay. And then the other injury is the physical trauma and scarring. So physical attacks can result in trauma to the skin and underlying tissues, causing scarring that may be both physical and emotional reminders of the traumatic events. So Mama said today, you guys are looking all beautiful. Imagine now walking out of here with bruises and scars. And they get so deep that someone can actually have a scar that you can notice. And that it affects self-esteem, it affects so many other issues with women. So as you're sitting here, ladies, and I see that you are very beautiful, Mama said, when you walk out, you always tell yourself that, ngizobangela. Yes. So no one has the right to even touch you. That is domestic violence. The warning signs, we said the red flags, if someone does it once, it's enough to say no. I have to tell someone. Because it escalates, it goes from, it's just a slap, it's just a push, it's just a fist, it's just a kick, and the next thing is the coffin. Okay, so we need to be aware, and I'm going to, at the last slide that I put in my presentation, is the warning signs. So you need to be aware of this behavior while it's still at the beginning stages. Because I'll speak about it again later. The perpetrator has a certain cycle, and Ms. Lang talked about this very well. They try to coerce you, to force you to do something, right? The second one is to control you. So when it gets to that point, you yourself will feel so weak, or the victim of violence. I know a lot of people say, I've been with this man for 10 years and they're doing the same thing. Why doesn't she go? It's because of the power or the controlling behavior that he has on the victim. And it's very difficult to break away from that. Because he has learned your weaknesses. Mama said he comes and buys you flowers. It's a cycle. It's a very sick cycle. So at the beginning, while it's still at the beginning stages, we need to be empowered enough to say, I'm not going to tolerate this. And then the other physical injury, while PTSD is not a physical injury in the traditional sense, it's a psychological condition that often follows experiences of gender-based violence. It can manifest with physical symptoms such as sleep disturbance, headaches, and gastrointestinal issues, always having a runny tummy. That could be, so that's the PTSD psychological, but it can have physical symptoms. You can physically get sick because of the trauma. Okay, so the second point is the socio-economical consequences. How do we address the socio-economical consequences, including sleep disorders, unproductiveness, suicidal thoughts, abuse to other women and children, and the social stigma faced by survivors? Okay, so research says addressing the social economical consequences and broader impacts of gender-based violence requires a multifaceted approach involving various sectors such as the healthcare, the law enforcement, social services, education, and community engagement. Here are the strategies to address these issues. So we need comprehensive support services. We need to establish specialized support services for survivors that provide medical care, psychological counseling, legal assistance, and social support. This can help survivors address physical and mental health issues, legal challenges, and emotional trauma. So I'm so happy that Mom Counselor is here, because these are the things that she can also explore in her office to say these are the things that we need to do. The second way of addressing these socio-economical consequences is economic empowerment programs. So we need to develop programs that empower survivors economically, such as vocational training, job placement assistance, and microfinancing initiatives. Have you heard that women who are victims of gender-based violence, another reason why they cannot get out of that situation is because they are financially dependent on the perpetrator, right? So this is important, economic empowerment programs, to be able to give these women skills to say, if you can't just take someone out of the situation without providing the solutions or the plan. It's very good that, yes, we need, when you are in a situation like that, the first thing, and Mama knows about this, is safety. You need to get out of that situation. But we also need plans, because we don't want the person to go back. Because if there's no plans, if they see after a month, oh, where I'm staying, I'm a burden, my cousin is doing this, they're gonna go back. So the best way is to get the person empowered to know that they can stand on their own 2 feet. It's even more difficult and challenging when there are children in the picture, because mama always thinks about ingane. What is the children going to eat? Okay, another way to address the socioeconomic consequences is educational initiatives. We need to implement educational programs that raise awareness about gender-based violence, consent, and healthy relationships. So we need to learn how to get into healthy relationships. These programs should target schools, workplaces, and communities to promote a culture of respect and equality. And then we also need mental health support. We need to offer accessible and culturally sensitive mental health services to address issues like sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts. Combining therapy, support groups, and medication when necessary can help survivors manage their mental health. When a child comes to you and says that I'm having suicidal thoughts, I know as parents we don't want to hear that. And even for us who are culturally inclined, we start to think there's other things happening besides from the mental health. And then we know that we are Christians, so spiritually we can argue it from that point of view as well. That is satanic, the works of the devil, which it is. But while we are also saying that, we need to what? Access help for these children. Depression, yes, it's a fear from the devil. It's things that are planted by the devil. Because I'm a Christian psychologist, I believe that. But it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still something that's happening. Hello? Oh, my mic is still on. So you can't just pray it out, okay? Yes, teach the child to go to church, teach the ways of God, but also recognize that this person there's something that he's thinking or she's thinking that's not right, and that needs to be addressed, and that's where psychologist comes in. You know, there's something that he's sitting with that he can't express. That's where psychologist comes in. You need to speak to the psychologist. Okay. And then another way of also addressing the socioeconomic consequences is child and family services. I love when Omama counselor spoke about, in psychology we call it modeling behavior. When a child grows up in a family that is abusive, they are modeling that behavior. If Baba is hitting Oma, the boy child is modeling that behavior. When he goes out, not only playing house, what is house? The hair. Not only playing that, but at school, they become bullies. And I'm not sure if anyone was watching the news yesterday. There were 4 children who tried to commit suicide. 2 died, and 2 are critical in hospital. at one of the schools. I also just saw it by chance on the news yesterday. So when that is happening, when there's abuse in the family, the boy child will model the behavior of the father because they feel that is what? The right thing to do. And the girl child also models the mother's behavior because she believes that is the way to behave. And then if you check the pattern of these children while they are growing up, there comes a point where the boy child can recognize that what I'm doing or how I'm being raised is not right. So they start to have their own thinking. Remember, the children, when they are small, their brains are still developing. So when they get to a certain age, they can see that, no man, what daddy's doing is not right. So in psychology, we say, in the conscious, so what you see in the surface, the boy child can see that it's wrong. Normally, what do boys say? When I grow up, I don't want to be like my father. So they are seeing that from the conscious. We say in psychology, the conscious. But the unconscious, it's the suppressed memories, the trauma. And that's what controls the behavior later on in life. So consciously, they say, I don't want to be like my father. I will not hit a woman. But what is there? It's the unconscious, it's underneath. Because it's not being addressed. Remember, this child didn't get counseling, right? Because the abuse was just going. The father is taking the mother, throwing over the walls. The child is not getting counseling. So all these suppressed memories, he lives with them. It's not that it's not there anymore. My speaker said sometimes it's difficult to see the red flags because the person has the cars, so they all hidden. Suppressed memories. Maybe even for himself, he's trying to be a better person. But these memories, they will always come out, especially when they are faced with conflict or a situation where we have to resolve a problem. He doesn't know how to resolve a problem. He doesn't know how to sit down. What does he know? Shout. Okay, so that's the cycle. So we need to have the child and family services where they'll be able to speak about these things. Okay, I'm gonna skip a few things just aware of your time. I'm also timing myself. But I think you get the gist of the socioeconomic consequences. And then we also know others is like crisis helplines. SADC is one of the big ones, which is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. It's really here in KZN, very, very functional. So if you are a victim of gender-based violence or you know somebody, you can also contact the SADC. If you just go on Google, SADC, they have offices as well in KZN. Okay. Before I move on, community mobilization is another one which is very important. We need to engage in communities in addressing gender-based violence through workshops, discussions, and events. And community members can collectively change harmful norms and support survivors. My speakers before me, they spoke about that the church needs to be the foundation of such engagements. We can't wait for the people out there to do it for us. The church is where there is love. We know it in the Bible that God is love, and therefore the church is love. And that's where it should start, here in the church. Okay, so my third point that I'll be talking about as well is the gender-based violence and substance abuse. So what is the link between gender-based violence and substance use? So I'll be focusing more on the victim of violence with regards to the substance abuse. So gender-based violence can trigger or exacerbate substance abuse for several reasons. Survivors may turn to drugs or alcohol as a way to cope with the physical and emotional trauma they have experienced. Self-medication. Substance abuse might be used to numb psychological pain, anxiety, and depression resulting from the violence. Peer pressure Social isolation due to stigma or fear may lead survivors to associate with individuals who engage in substance abuse. I know growing up, I grew up in a small town in the Free State. It's called Kutlwano. So in the township, there's always that corner house that sells mqombothi, not mqombothi, but the other one. We call it Scala in food. Yes. And we would see old woman who was an old mkhulus who was sitting there and drinking. And because they are older, we had normalized it as it's okay because it's the elderly. But what in fact has been happening is that these people, they resort to the alcohol as a means of coping with what is happening in their houses. So even in our modern generation, I'm at 2000s, they are busy out there at the clubs everywhere. And from this view, we can think that the kids are having fun. But if we go deeper, there's actually something happening, and we can see that. There's no joy in alcohol. There's no one you can point drinking alcohol, getting drunk, and you say they're happy. That person is stressed. That person is trying to numb something. You cannot look at someone doing drugs and you say they're happy. There's something happening. If you dig deeper in psychology, we see this in our offices, where patients come with substance use disorders. If you look under that, depression, especially for men, for males. For females who are drinking a lot of alcohol, who are using substances, when you look and dig deeper, remember psychology is a safe space, everything comes out now. You find that there's bipolar disorders, anxiety. So victims are trying to numb the pain by using these substances. Okay. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we need to be aware of these things, that when they happen, don't just say, I'm just drinking, it's just one. Tomorrow it's just two. The next day it's just three. You know, there's something that you're trying to hide. The victim is trying, sometimes it's about to, it's even about trying to deal with the perpetrator when they get home. But it's affecting your mental health, and it will continue to be a cycle. This is exactly what I'm talking about, my next point, escaping reality. Substance use can provide temporary relief from distressing memories and emotions associated with the violence. And one of the ways for us to help each other in the community is if you see a very respectable umama who, and I'm not here to condone alcohol or to say it's not right, what is not right is the excess use of it because of these kinds of violence, right? If you see umama all of a sudden now 360 degrees is drinking alcohol, then surely you can say there's something that's not right. In the community where you say, now I'm seeing this person more often here at the tavern, you need to inquire what's going on. And they will not always tell you. They will look happy, they will look like it's fun, but digging deep, that's what psychologists do. We're not very different. What we do is we just dig deep. Then you actually get to know the person. Okay, so this is all trying to cope. All right. So the next point is unemployment and challenges of reintegration into the workforce. So I'll just quickly go through this. Survivors of gender-based violence can face challenges related to employment and reintegration into the workforce due to various factors. So they can be impacted by their health. So physical and mental health issues related to the violence can impact survivors' ability to constantly be at work. So you'll see that they start taking a lot of sick leaves, a lot of unpaid leave because of these health problems. Trauma, survivors may experience difficulty concentrating, making decisions, and handling stress due to the trauma, affecting their work performance. Stigma and discrimination. Survivors may face discrimination or stigma from employers and co-workers, which can hinder their job prospects and career advances. Workplace safety concerns. If the violence was perpetrated by a partner or co-worker, survivors might feel unsafe at work, impacting their well-being and productivity. Lack of resources. Economic dependence on an abusive partner can lead to financial instability after leaving the relationship, making it harder to find and maintain employment. I think we've spoken about that. Okay. All right, my fourth point for today is the risks of HIV infections. So we need to discuss the risks of HIV infections due to non-sexual acts in South Africa. So how many of you know that South Africa has one of the highest rates of infections in the world? And non-consensual sexual acts contribute significantly to the increased risk of HIV transmission within the country. The intersection of gender-based violence, sexual assault, and HIV transmission is a complex issue with profound implications for public health and human rights. And here's an overview of the situation. Sexual violence and HIV risks. Non-consensual sexual acts, including rape and sexual assault, often involve forced and unprotected sexual intercourse. This puts both the survivor and the perpetrator at a heightened risk of contracting the HIV. So forces that contribute to this increased risk include lack of condom use. So non-consensual sexual acts may involve forced or coerced unprotected sex, increasing the likelihood of HIV transmission. Multiple partners. Survivors of sexual violence might experience more sexual encounters, potentially again increasing the risk of HIV. Gender inequality. Deep-seated gender inequality and patriarchal norms contribute to sexual violence and limit survivors' ability to negotiate safer sexual practices. Stigma and silence. Stigma surrounding sexual violence and HIV often prevents survivors from seeking medical care, reporting the violence, or accessing HIV prevention and treatment services. Poverty. Socioeconomic disparities can contribute to vulnerability, as economic dependence and lack of resources can limit survivors' options and choices. So, I think we've already spoke about in my speakers before about also the causes of gender-based violence. So, poverty is a big one. My speaker spoke about the children getting into relationships, having a week that you don't know where it's coming from, you know? And I think we are doing well as a country in terms of educating the younger ones or children actually going to university. But that's not enough. And I want us to think about what more can we do for our children to break away from the poverty. Yes, when children go to university, we know that we want them to change the situation at home. But we need to also look at the pressure that they might be feeling as well. That the first thing that I need to do when I start working is to go and build umama 10-bedroom and buy umama car and do this for my cousins. So not to say that that shouldn't be done, but I think while we send our children to university, we need to also be aware of the pressures that we might be putting them under. that you are the light of our family. And university is very difficult. The child might go there knowing that, yes, I'm the light of the home, and then when they get there to university, they fail a subject, not because they were doing other things, but because sometimes it's really difficult to study. But the pressure to know that I'm the one that needs to change the whole situation can also contribute to them doing other things. So let's be aware of that as parents. Okay. And then the last point is the impact on mental health. So let's highlight the importance of mental health, wellness, and the long-term impact of gender-based violence on survivors' mental health. The importance of mental health wellness in the context of survivors of gender-based violence cannot be overstated. Gender-based violence can have profound and lasting impact on survivors' mental health, and addressing these issues is crucial for their overall well-being and recovery. So mental health wellness is essential for individuals to lead fulfilling lives. Mental health affects the way people think. So the way you think, you're using what? Your mind, your mental abilities. So if you are being violated, it will impact the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act. So some people talk about mood swings. Oh, one moment like this, one moment like that. That's mental health. And then if you are being violated, if you are being abused, those are the things that will also be affected. So it's very important for you to seek advice or to seek counsel, or if you know someone who's being impacted by violence, even if it's a child who is in that environment, we need to try and address that. And a lot of times these victims who are in such a situation, these actions, they affect or they influence their ability to cope with challenges. They affect their abilities to maintain healthy relationships. And also it affects the way they want to achieve their goals. Survivors of gender-based violence, prioritizing mental health wellness is particularly vital due to the traumatic experiences that they face. So what is PTSD? I will not be here at the end for the questions. I know we will be having questions, so maybe let me just see from the audience, without putting anyone under pressure, if anyone knows what is PTSD.
Disorder.
Yes. I can see I'm amongst learned audience, post-traumatic stress disorder. So from today on, if you hear someone say PTSD, you're not going to say, we don't know that. That's abalungu's things, right? Because you've learned it today. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Post means after the act has been done. Post the trauma. So someone who is in a car accident can also have post-traumatic stress disorder. Someone who saw someone getting shot in front of them, they are not going crazy, they have PTSD. So what are the symptoms of PTSD that survivors may experience? We have already started discussing them. Headaches, flashbacks. So a woman who's being abused can have these things as though they are playing in front of her. So the perpetrator can be somewhere else, but this woman will still experience flashbacks. So maybe when she's sitting down watching TV, it will look as if the act is playing again, or they are being abused again. And they will start crying, and they will start feeling scared, and people around might not understand what is happening, and it's because of the result of the trauma. Some people experience nightmares as well, so in their sleep they might be crying. They might be jumping. If you try to wake them up like this, their first response is to hyper-arouse, to be scared. And some of them also experience emotional numbness. So it's like someone doesn't have a heart. I think my speaker spoke about the danger of the survivor becoming the perpetrator, because you close off to try to protect yourself. But later on, you are actually filled with lots of anger, and then you start doing exactly what the perpetrator had done. I will share a little bit about my time when I was working at the Department of Correctional Service at the Westville Prison. I was working at the female wards as well, female prison. And there was a lady who was sentenced to 20 years for killing the boyfriend. And I think we know some cases like that where the victim had had enough, and eventually they acted out, but it landed her in prison. So we need to be aware of those dangers and learn how not to become perpetrators as well. How do we do that? By actually be given the space to talk about what's happening to you. Counseling, whether it's counseling in church, counseling with a psychologist. And I know a lot of people think psychologists are expensive. Yes, we are. We went to school for like almost 8 years. But I'm working at Albert Luthuli. There are other hospitals around. RK Khan, I think, there's Clearwood, but it doesn't have a psychologist. There's RK Khan, there are psychologists. Around your area, if you can try to find a hospital, there is always a department of psychology, and those services are for free. So the government is really trying to enhance mental health within our communities. It's just about us now breaking the stigma that if you go see a psychologist, there must be something wrong with you. Okay. So another disorder that survivors or victims of mental health, victims of gender-based violence can experience is depression and anxiety. I think depression and anxiety are two words that a lot of people have heard about. I remember when I was feeling depressed, my mom also said, "What is that?" And I was doing my internship in Cape Town. So I'm from Free State, and now I'm in Cape Town. And it was very difficult. I was far away from my family. I was finding it very difficult to integrate with the Western Cape people. The work itself, psychology, as much as we help people, but we also retain a lot of these trauma. So that's why it's also important for us to also get our own counseling. So in internship, it's still training, so nobody tells you about this. So the work became very much, and I went home and I said, I don't want to do this anymore. My mom asked me what's happening, and I said, I'm depressed. And she's like, depressed? How can you be depressed? You know that thing the parents say, how can you be depressed? You are getting a salary, you are going to this school, you have shoes, you have, not my child, you can't be depressed. And that actually depresses you even more. The fact that you can't even speak to your parents about it. So guys, depression and anxiety is one of the biggest, I think the second leading cause of death in South Africa. Depression, let me tell you the symptoms now. When a person is depressed, they feel sad most of the time. There's just no joy. There's some emptiness inside. They can't become happy. So most of their days, they are feeling sad. And the second way of noticing depression is if you stop doing the things that you used to love. When you used to love hanging around with your friends, now you don't like that anymore. When you used to being part of the church choir, now you don't do that anymore. So those are some of the signs of depression. So when you start noticing these kinds of things, you also need to start realizing that maybe it's time for me to start getting help. Depression also is about lack of appetite. You don't feel like eating. You don't feel like eating. Agleg. A lot of my patients like saying the food is not going down. And we've normalized that, me, I just eat in the afternoon only. But there's something wrong. When your appetite changes, there's something wrong. It's a warning sign. The body is also trying to warn you that there's something happening. Another one is being tired most of the time. So having fatigue is another symptom of depression. Insomnia, not sleeping at night. So I know that the elder generation will be using sleeping tablets, going to the GP every now and then. But medication helps for a little bit. What helps most in the long term is actually talking about what's making you not sleep, and which is therapy. Another symptom of depression is helplessness or hopelessness. You feel like there's nothing that you're doing in this earth. You feel like you don't have a purpose. Okay. Another one is lack of concentration. At work, maybe you can't concentrate. Something that you used to do in 30 minutes, it's taking you now an hour to do. It shows that cognitively there's something that's not okay. Losing weight without doing the diet or without being sick can also be another symptom, or gaining weight as well. And then the most important one is the suicidal thoughts. If you start experiencing the need to die, or you don't want to live, when you are walking, you just feel like I can just throw myself in front of this taxi, this bus, there's something that's not right. So it's very important to be aware of these symptoms. Anxiety means your mind is not shutting off. You are always worried, like if you are here, you're already thinking about when I get home, I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3. I wonder if the child locked the door. I wonder if, you're always worrying about something. How many of you sitting here are worrying about something out there? You are worried whether you lock the house, and you go and check before you leave the door. Then you go again, you're like, I think I didn't lock it. The ones with cars will know, but that's because of the crime in South Africa, right? So if that worry starts to occupy your mind that you can't function, it becomes a disorder. Yes, it's okay to worry, like when you get here, like, I just remembered, I need to go give my kid another 50 rand. Okay, but if it starts impacting your daily functioning, now you can't function anymore. It becomes a disorder. And if you can feel that you can't control that worry, then it is a problem. So people, victims of gender-based violence, they experience this anxiety and the depression. Okay, and then self-esteem and body issues. The trauma and stigma of violence can lead to low self-esteem and negative body image impacting how survivors perceive themselves and their worth. My speakers before me also spoke about this. You used to dress well, and now you don't dress anymore. It can also impact trust and relationship difficulties. Survivors may struggle with issues of trust, leading to challenges in forming and maintaining healthy relationships. We spoke about substance abuse, suicidal thoughts. Okay. So how do we then address these mental health issues? I'm just going to give you a few things to do when you are going through that. And then the last slide about the characteristics of the perpetrator. So we need as psychologists to also have trauma-informed care. So healthcare providers and support services should adopt a trauma-informed approach, recognizing the unique needs of and triggers of survivors. Counseling and therapy is another one. Holistic healing, which means we need to encourage survivors to engage in activities that promote well-being, such as exercise, mindfulness, meditation, and creative expression. And I know in our culture, in the African culture, we don't believe that sitting down and not doing anything, we believe that that's wasting time. But mindfulness is very important. Just to sit down outside quietly and listen to your own thoughts. Sit down in a quiet place, not doing anything, and let your thoughts get out of your mind. I know that you'll be thinking about, hey, also figure manje, I haven't cooked, the kids are coming back from school. Those are the things that actually contribute to you not functioning well. You need to take time, sit down, and think about things. And let your thoughts just go out of your mind. In our counseling sessions, we also encourage people to do journaling. Write down the things that are affecting you every day. Because when you take out these things from your mind, they are on paper. They get, the brain, if you keep on loading things on your brain, that's when, depression is actually like being overwhelmed, depressed. You're pressing your mind. So you take out these things by putting them down on paper, recording everything. Okay, today this is what happened. I didn't like this, blah, 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 blah. You write it down, it's out of your mind, there. You make space for your mind. But if you keep on putting this thing, these people are doing this to me at work. When I get home again, it's the kids. Again, next door is this one. You are pressing your mind. Okay. And then support groups as well is another form that offers survivors a sense of community and validation, reducing feelings of isolation. Legal and safety support, ensuring survivors have access to legal protection and safety can help alleviate anxiety. I think the legal part, the next speakers, they're also going to touch more on that. Okay, so the last slide, the perpetrator's characteristics. So I was reading about the perpetrator. What type of profile do they have? Okay. Perpetrators of family and domestic violence can vary in age and be from any socioeconomic demographic. So people who are perpetrators of domestic or gender-based violence, it's not just people who are poor or someone who looks rough in the face or someone who looks big, They can come from anywhere, any cultural background, any ethnicity. They can be either Sesotho, Zulu, Xhosa. So there's no one way of saying it's only these kinds of people. And they can also be from any religion. They can still be going to church as well. They can occupy any profession. They can be a professor, they can be a medical doctor, a lawyer. They can, occupy any profession. And they can live anywhere. It's not just people who live in the townships who are perpetrators of gender-based violence. Even the ones who are staying in the suburbs can also be perpetrators. And they can be any gender. So we also know that women also abuse men, but majority we know are males. Perpetrators can be good at hiding the violence, publicly presenting as kind. Have you noticed that when the victim, they tell their stories, they say, this is what I told Spanbani about what happened. They say, no, not that guy. The sweet one. The respectful one, then you look like you are telling lies now. So they're very good at hiding the violence, and they present as kind, loving, charming, and likable. But they behave in cruel and violent, undermining and manipulative ways in private. And they make it very difficult that when you go and tell your family, because when they go to the family, they always Bapati Rosa, they're treating the mothers well, the family well, and then your family sees you as the problem because you talk. But they actually do not know the whole story. So this is their characteristics. And at the start of the new relationship, it's not always easy to tell if it will end in an abusive relationship. Many abusive people appear like the ideal partner in the early stages. The warning signs of abuse don't always appear overnight. They may emerge as the relationship grows. So some of the red flags is that they become jealous. They have jealousy and possessiveness. So they want to be with you constantly, accuse you of cheating all the time, follows you around and frequently calls, asks friends to check up on you. Another behavior is a controlling behavior, constantly questions who you spend your time with and what you did, what you wore, what you said, where you went. Makes you ask permission to do certain things, acts like you don't have the ability to make good decisions, hides controlling behaviors by pretending to be concerned about your safety. Quick involvement, 6 months or less, you're living together or you are engaged. Another sign. Claims to love, they claim that it's love at first sight. Pressure for commitment, says you are the only one who can make him feel that way. Blames others for their problem. If there are a problem at school or at work, it is always someone else's fault. If anything goes wrong in the relationship, it's your fault. Won't take responsibility for their own behavior. They also blame others for their own feelings. They try to make you responsible for how they feel. You are making me mad. You are hurting me by not doing what I ask. I can't help being angry. They won't take responsibility of their own feelings. So every one of us, we are responsible for our own feelings. No matter how much someone else provokes you, you are in control of your emotion. You can't say someone else is making you angry. That's your emotion. You need to learn how to control and respond, because you have a choice. You can walk away. Okay. Then this one I love is the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They call it that, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Sudden mood changes, like they have two personalities. 1 minute they're nice, the next minute exploding. 1 minute happy, next minute sad. If you start seeing those behaviors, red flags, you need to seek help. Past battering or past abusive behavior. You may hear that the person was abusive to someone else. There's always a pattern. They will say that it's a lie, or their ex has been crazy, or it wasn't that bad. Breaking or striking objects. They break loved possessions, beats on the table with fits, or beats the wall, or throws objects around. You need to be aware of those. Any force during an argument, Mama spoke about it as well, Mom Counselor, the pushing, the shoving, restraining you from leaving the room. So Ms. Msimang also spoke about intimidation, that you're just afraid. They haven't even done anything to you. That's intimidation. When you feel like I can't pass because they're just standing there like that, that's a form of abuse. They use threats, causing fear through threats, like they will stare at you. Some people just stare at you like, then you know that I need to keep quiet. So that's bullying. It's bullying, right? No one should intimidate you. Destroying property, Also, a very important indicator of a perpetrator of gender-based violence is someone who hurts pets, animals. Someone who hurts pets, dogs, cats. That is a very good indicator that there's something that's not right. When I was working at DCS at Westville, one of the offenders, they actually took a cat. So there are cats in the cells, not in the cells where they live. You see, in the prison, there are cells, and then there's the ones that are not so dangerous. They have like an open area where they can just step out of their cells. So there are cats that roam around, and one of the prisoners took the cat by the tail, out. So that's a behavior of someone that is not mentally stable. We call them antisocial personality disorders. They don't have remorse for other people. So hurting cats, dogs, animals, it's another indicator. Undermining your confidence. They damage your self-esteem through humiliation, ridiculing you, shaming, or gaslighting. Gaslighting is a very important word that you must always remember. When someone makes you doubt yourself, you tell them this is what you do, they think, you must be going crazy. So the moment someone makes you question your own sanity, that person is gaslighting you. And it often happens with narcissistic personality individuals. They also use the children. They're telling the victim she's a bad mother, threatening to take the kids away, forcing the victim to get pregnant. That's another one. Threatening to harm the children or engaging in risky behaviors with them, making the child watch or participate in their abuse. Isolation, preventing the victim from working, cutting her off from her friends and family, physically preventing her from leaving the house. They also use victim blaming, telling the victim she provoked him. And they also use of male privilege. So expecting sex on demand, demanding that the victim does all the cooking and the housework, controlling all the money, excusing excessive jealousy and violence. And then the last one is minimization. For example, they blame alcohol, stress, or not having a job as a reason for what they're doing. Okay, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. I hope that was informative and that you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you so much. Sorry I took so long.